Hey guys, what's up? And welcome to season freaking 4 of the podcast with myself and none other than some guy named Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe.
Is that right?
I replaced Jay in season 4 because contract negotiations didn't really work out the way that Jay wanted them to, and fired him.
Nope, this guy was easy. He just required one grilled cheese.
Yeah.
That was it.
Provolone, though, not American.
Yeah, that part was a bit pretentious, but, you know, is what it is. Good to be back. Not as near as long of a gap as
no, it's only been about a month, little more than a month.
Right, and we could have recorded before then, but when we took a step back and kind of looked at the gaming that's happening this year and what's releasing and when it's releasing, not a whole lot was happening in January, really. So it seemed best to just kind of, give it a little time. Let's gather some intel, let some of these games come out and get some info on them, like the one we're going to be talking about today, actually. And
in the meantime, we also, been playing some new games and whatever. I started playing last year's Game of the Year, God of War.
Yeah. That's actually, before we even get into the episode, that's something me and Jay talked about. And I don't know when we'll discuss it, but in a podcast for this season, we talked about the challenge of playing a game this year and beating it that was a popular game of last year or earlier, whatever have you, that we just not got around to.
Maybe one of the Game of the Year nominees.
Right.
What was it? It was Red Dead. It was Fortnite. It was...
mine...
War.
Which you ended up picking God of War when we last talked about it. I don't know if you've changed it or not, but... and I actually picked one that was from 2017 instead of 2018.
Oh, okay.
Which was that is actually not even a AAA title, which shocks me when I play it because it definitely feels like it. But it's Hellblade. Was the one I picked to play only because it's only like 8 to 9 hours of gameplay, so it wasn't a monumental, crazy task of.
It's not Red Dead Redemption 2, which is also another game I've been playing. I was homesick from work on Friday, and I sat down and played Red Dead Redemption 2 for like 12 hours that day. Yeah, holy cow, what a video game. I got to tell you. I like it a lot. That's a tall order to try to beat that game in this season of a podcast. Oh, not in the season of a podcast, maybe, but by the end of We keep calling our seasons to be 10 episodes long, but there's nothing dictating that.
This might be the one that changes because this is every single time fate seems to throw us a curveball and we don't get to start when we want to. And normally we end up getting started a little later in the year. And by that point, we're closer on the Game of the Year kind of topic.
Or E3 is kind of the other mid-season or mid-year break.
And now we find ourselves a lot closer to the front of the year.
Yeah.
So we mostly are going to be looking at games that are just coming out. And then as we approach summer, we'll start really honing in on E3.
Speculating on what's coming down the line.
But should these things, proceed as normal and it's every week, then we would run into episode 10 well before that even happens.
Yeah, so it'll be like April.
Right. So this would definitely be... This will probably be a very different season than the rest, which I'm okay with. Season 4 is all about new things.
Keep all you Polish people on your toes.
Yeah, season 4 is all about new things, like our friend Joe here. Out with the old, in with the new.
Yeah, screw that.
If I would say that same sentence in a Boston accent, but I'm not going to offend you by doing a really bad Boston accent. So you're welcome.
You wouldn't offend me. You might offend Jay, but you wouldn't offend me.
Because I cannot do a good Boston accent, I'll tell you right now.
Thank you for not trying.
Yeah, I'm just not going to embarrass myself in this social media facet. Anyway, so just to go and hit the ground rolling with today's episode. So we're going to be talking about a game that literally just came out a few days ago, actually. I can tell you exactly how many. It's less than a week, if I remember right. Or are we right at it a week now? I can't remember.
By the time the podcast drops, it'll be about a week, yeah.
Right. But I know it's not a week right now.
No. It's been less than a week.
Okay. That's what I thought. So Resident Evil 2, which for those of you who are not familiar, it is a remake of the original Resident Evil 2, which was almost 20 years ago. So
yeah, I think it's 15 years ago.
Is it 15?
I don't remember. 15 or 20 years, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's an old game.
We know, in the words of Stained, it's been a while.
It's been a while, yeah.
We were laughing when we were talking about this earlier of like, how do you really compare two games like this when one was so pixelated that you can't even really tell facial features other than, hey, those two dots are where eyes are supposed to be. And then now you're playing a game, hey, I can see your pores on your face.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And this, like, Resident Evil 2 was such a beloved game, and it's nice that it got a remake to bring it kind of into the modern era and adapt its, play style into a more modern style. But there are those out there that think that the tank controls and fixed cameras are kind of the better way to play it. I don't know. Right.
So let's just start on a very basic sense and kind of just gather what each of our experiences are with this series. So if I remember right, you as a whole have not played much, if any, of the Resident Evil series. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. Resident Evil 2 came out for the PlayStation, PlayStation 1. I have never owned a PlayStation until the PS4, so I missed out on many of those games. That's why I'm glad now that Crash got a remake, Spyro got a remake, Crash Team Racing's getting a remake, and now Resident Evil 2 is coming out, Final Fantasy 7's getting a remake. Like, I get to experience all of these things.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of, but like more in the modern era. It's hard to go back and play the original Crash Bandicoot games if you don't have the nostalgia for it, because you just play a frustrating platformer that hasn't aged well.
Very much so.
But with the newer one, you play a frustrating platformer that's brand new, so it's fine.
I can relate to that because I know we talked about it on another podcast. Like, I completely get and understand everyone's love for Zelda, but that's one of the games that it just, by happenstance, I never played it when I was young. So trying to play it now, there's no nostalgia attachment to it. So other than Breath of the Wild is the only exception, but like all the other ones was like, I mean, they're fine, but
I respect it for what it is, but I never played them, and going back at this point probably isn't worth it.
It's difficult without that nostalgia attachment to it. So I get that wholeheartedly. So my experience is a little different. I would not call myself, if there's two lines in the sand, you have you, which have never played it at all, and then another line, which is just hardcore, played every last one of them, platinum
multiple times.
I'm somewhere in the middle of those two.
You've beaten some of them.
I've beaten some of them. I've played pieces of all of them. I don't think I missed any fully, but there's plenty of stuff that I could not remember. I could not tell you from a lot of them. I know that there's this kind of black hole around the middle that I just didn't care for, like somewhere between 3 and 6, or kind of just a blur of like, whatever. 1 and 2 have a lot of nostalgia for me because I was a lot younger when that was happening. So the memories are completely different than how it is now.
Yeah, I think because like when you're younger, your mind's a little more spongy and it like sucks things up and remembers them better. And like, because nowadays, like I can remember Mario Parties 1, 2, and 3 like the back of my hand, but like Mario Party 5, 6, and 7 less so. Even though I played those a lot, like because I was just younger and just more impressionable, I guess.
Which is true. I mean, I can remember playing the first Resident Evil, and when you see that first zombie in the hallway, me and my buddies, which, gosh, I can't even remember how old we were. We're just basically, nope.
We're done. Turn it off.
We're done. Turn it off. And we're like looking down the hallway in our actual house we're in. Like, are we fine? Is everything cool? Which, I mean, obviously we still do that now, but at least we're older.
Yeah,
that's the one difference. Is at least
sound a little manlier.
I can go get ice cream before dinner, but I'll still check the hallway.
My mom lets me play video games after 9 p.m. now, so there's that.
Oh yeah, and I don't pay rent, so it's great. Neither of us live with our parents, for disclosure.
No,
neither of us do that.
Not that there's anything wrong if you do, but I'm not about that life anymore.
So we're on different spectrums of the Resident Evil of like how much we've played, but neither of us are hardcore is basically what that boils down to.
Yeah, I mean, I respect the series for what it is. You know, I have a lot of friends that still talk about Resident Evil 4 as being like one of the best and 6 being like one of the worst games ever created. But
right. Here's what I'll say about that, because I see that a lot now with I'm not big on social media and like reading a whole bunch of stuff, but there are a few groups that
the fact that you don't know how to read doesn't help.
No, I'm working on that, but you know, cues are hard, man.
Matt, they're just O's with lines through them, but they make a completely different
sound.
Up. Remember.
They're mean to me.
Someone's got to be.
But some of the groups I'm in on Facebook that my friends have invited me to, they're just like a game, like a nerd gaming group for just people to come and just talk about stuff. And a lot of them will say like kind of just what Jay was saying, that they'll talk about a game in a sense of it being like the worst ever made or something like this. And it gets a little weird to me when someone is trying to express their feelings of a game that they didn't like, but they use that terminology specifically, especially like on a game like Resident Evil Biohazard. I get that it was very different in a lot of ways and it may not have been what you wanted it to be. But when a game unanimously has that much of high scores, like across the board, has overall, like, I think like 80 to 90% plus positive feedback from like any source you went to.
A lot of 90s and above I saw.
And just a ton of great stuff, nominated for a bunch of things. You have all that. It's kind of just ignorant to say that it's a terrible game. Now, you can say you don't like it, and that's fine.
Right.
But to call it a terrible game, to me, is just very misleading and just kind of expressing your own feelings, but without doing any research is basically what that is, which I get a little annoyed by, because I'm like, well, I mean, like if someone comes to this and they're taking your word for it, you might have just deprived them of playing a game that they might have really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Is the way I look at that. So that gets a little frustrating, but I see that a lot because Jay actually, that one sentence you said actually made me think, because I literally just saw this like today, and it wasn't this game, it was some other one, but it was a similar circumstance that like this game had just won multiple awards and he's just calling it the crappiest game of all time. It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
like,
you got to have that conversation. I'm trying to teach, you know, my students. I'm trying to teach them young. You know, there's half of them are really into Fortnite, and other half of them think Fortnite's the worst game in the world. And I'm like,
right,
just because you like it doesn't mean it's a bad video game, you know. But
very true. We had that same conversation about Call of Duty.
Back in season 3.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, like, I get it. Like, there's a lot of hate for it, but it's hard pressed to call it a bad game.
Yeah, and I think really the big deal of it is like Call of Duty's not a bad game. Fortnite's not a bad game. Their fan bases are the worst things in the world.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah,
that's a conversation that has your argument has weight on that one.
Yeah,
I'll agree with that.
So to bring it back around, Resident Evil 2, a beautiful looking remake for the modern era. Mm-hmm. You play as pretty boy Jack Daniels, or whatever the frick his name is, and you walk down a hallway.
His name is Jack Daniels.
Yeah, okay. You know, in Resident Evil 2 for the PlayStation 1, they had fixed camera angles. So it was kind of like a movie where like the camera, like you're in one hallway and the camera's, you know, down at the floor, and you kind of watch your character come closer to it or further away from it. And then you turn the corner and now the camera's up on a wall up in the corner. And so you don't have control over the camera, and it's allowed to generate fear in that way because you can see things with the camera that maybe your character doesn't see. Like as you're walking towards the camera, a creature walks past a window behind him that you can see that they can't or whatever. And that was a common tactic they'd use for, you know, what they call the lickers in that game, which are like one-hit kill monsters and just really horrifying to run into.
Right.
In the new remake, they got rid of the fixed camera angles, and it's just an over-the-shoulder third-person shooter. So it plays very differently, but they were able to get suspense and horror in other ways, like with, cheap jump scares. But like with foggy corridors that you can't see.
Oh yeah. I heard someone trying to say the argument of, man, it's third person over the shoulder. You can't make a horror game like that. And I was like, have you heard of Dead Space?
No, you certainly can, but a lot of people were worried that it would lose the charm that was
correct
Resident Evil 2. And Resident Evil 2 is it was kind of considered like the best one for a long time. It's one of the more beloved retro Resident Evil games. Like 5 and 4 are pretty popular, but like those are kind of newer. 4 was Wii PS2 or 3 era. I don't remember.
Sounds right.
And 5 is only 5 or 6 years old at this point, maybe a little older. But 2 is kind of the beloved one. Like, yeah, Resident Evil 1, but they kind of ironed everything out for Resident Evil 2, and that was the good one. So people were worried about how the studio would handle it. So far, people seem happy with it, which is great. I'm happy for the fans,
Oh, yeah. And that was a really scary thing for me when they announced that, because the first thing that came to my mind is, oh, man, the ridiculousness that this fan base is about to have about this. Because trying to make a remake with that much of a distance in time and technology, you have so many questions of, should you do this the way it was initially, when some of the things they did in the original, they may have had to do it this way because they had no other choice. Like, there's a lot of things they may have had to do because they were limited to the technology they had. Now you have means of doing all sorts of different things. So, like, how much do we stick with original content and how much do we give a little wiggle room to make our own thing and kind of go different routes? And they seem to do a very good meet in the middle, to where there's a lot of things that they paid homage to and like stayed true to the original and how the story progressed and certain things that happened. And the biggest thing that I can recall, it's been years since I played the second, so I really didn't refresh too much on the original. I was just kind of focusing on this one. But the biggest thing I can remember is some of the notorious jump scares that people remember from the original. They definitely didn't repeat those where you would want them to be, because that would defeat the purpose of a jump scare. So they would, like, some of them, they would tease that it was about to happen and then it didn't. And then it would just happen later in a different fashion. That's a good way to do that to me. It was like, yeah, you're remaking something that exists. If there's a scary sense, if you already know it's coming, then that kind of eliminates part of the actual being scared. So to me, yeah, that's a cool thing to do. Hey, you thought this was going to be here? Nope.
It shakes it up and keeps it fresh. And it's, we've seen a lot of remakes in the last couple of years. We talked earlier about, Crash and Spyro. A lot of Zelda games have gotten remastered and re-released, just a lot of games from like our childhood, because nostalgia is bankable as heck. Companies are figuring out we can release the same game again and people will still pay for it. It's amazing.
It's not even an old game, but just look at Skyrim.
Yeah, exactly. They just took what already existed, put it into their new Fallout engine, and we're like, here.
How many times?
A little prettier.
How many times have they re-released Skyrim?
Exactly. It was terrible. But they, like companies are figuring that out, that nostalgia is bankable, and sometimes it's a good thing. I think that Spyro and Crash kind of needed a fresh coat of paint and to tweak some of the dated mechanics in it and whatever. And sometimes it's a bad thing, like Majora's Mask 3D for the 3DS was terrible. And games like that. So like whenever I hear remakes coming around, I always have like a raised eyebrow. Like, how's this one gonna do? And I'm still watching Final Fantasy VII. They finally started working on that game again now that Kingdom Hearts 3 is done. Stay tuned for next week when we talk about that game.
Yeah, boy.
But it's like new. I like new games. I'm excited to be playing Red Dead Redemption 2 right now. I'm excited to be playing God of War right now. But like sometimes going back and having a slice of your childhood's fun too, but like better.
Oh yeah. So
don't screw it up, Activision or anyone.
So let's talk about some of the negative feedback that this game has had and see where we land on this as far as it being valid. Because for anyone out there that's wanting to play it, we're not covering anything spoiler material or really anything story-wise. Because, I mean, my gosh, this game literally just came out last week. So
I don't even know the story. So
this is going to be more of a
you play as Jack Daniels, young upbeat rookie cop.
Exactly. You have that 100% correct. Don't Google otherwise. So we're going to talk about kind of the reviews and how it's being perceived right now overall, and some of the mechanics of it. That because I've watched more than Jay has, so I can kind of bring some stuff up of what I thought was really cool and bounce back and forth there. But some of the negative ones that kind of surprised me, and I think Jay kind of actually talked about this earlier with how different Resident Evil is depending on which one you played, because they went from suspense horror and then kind of went up a hill climbing toward more action base and dropped off the horror a little bit. And then finally turned back around with Biohazard, like, okay, let's go back to the roots of horror. And then now we're kind of back in that knit again. So a lot of the negative feedback we're getting for this game is people who want it to be the action stuff again. If you go into this game, it's literally a remake of one that you already, if you've paid attention to the Resident Evil series at all, you knew this one was not going to be that way.
Right.
You knew it wasn't. So I don't know what you were looking for there. So if you are a player and you're wanting it to be the action thing, let's just go ahead and save you the headache. It's not that game. So if that's going to ruin it for you, then don't play it.
I think a lot of what that might stem from, though, is it's been a while since we've had anything from Resident Evil, because like a lot of companies are able to push out like a new Assassin's Creed game every year, a new Call of Duty game every year. But some of these other bigger, more creative games, I hate to say that, take longer to make. And so Resident Evil 7 came out like what, 2016, 2017, I think?
Something like that.
Yeah, so it's been 2 or 3 years ish, more or less. And so then, finally like, oh, hey, another Resident Evil game is coming out, but it's not anywhere what I want. And so that's, I think, where a lot of that frustration stems from. Looking at the reviews of the game of Resident Evil 2 so far online, Steam has rated it 10 out of 10 from Steam user reviews. From Xbox reviews, it's looking at 98% positive feedback. Like, people are liking this game.
Oh, very much so.
It's a loud minority that are, and I understand that frustration. I'm a big fan of The Legend of Zelda, but I can almost guarantee you that the next Legend of Zelda game that's going to come out isn't going to be a Breath of the Wild scale game. It's going to be a cheap 3DS game that I'm not going to enjoy as much. Maybe,
Possibly.
Just don't be Triforce Heroes again. Please. I can't handle another game like that.
I'm kind of surprised at this one, but another common complaint in the midst of the negative reviews is the limited inventory system, which again, that goes back to the horror ones. Like they're kind of like, I mean, just like we just said with the last one.
That's been almost every Resident Evil so far, though, hasn't it?
A lot of them. There's been a few that deviated a little. Okay. Well, I say that they like most of them have always been that way. Like none of them are just going to be hey, you're literally in the movie Inception and your guns have no limit, so just shoot away. They do a very realistic sense of making you pay attention to your ammo and your inventory.
Right.
But this one, much like Biohazard, focuses on the horror in a lot of different aspects, and that's one of them. That is part of what makes the game scary, is because there's so many situations where how the game works after you get to a certain point, and you have this amount of ammo, and you're in this room with this amount of enemies, and I can't kill them all.
You've done the math, and the math said no.
I can't I have to get out of here. So your best bet is like, do you kill one and try to make space, or do you just hightail it? And even if you do, then you have 8 zombies that if you don't close something off, they're just going to keep following you. Yep. So that's a good horror element to add to it. But again, that's just going back to the different fan base that wants the game to be different things. So I say all this to say is that the feedback in the negative sense is very uplifting to me, because most of it just seems like it was a preference thing of someone wanting it to be a different game, and they should have really already known this before they even played it, but they made the review anyways. But we really haven't seen any bad negative reviews of like some seriously wrong game mechanics or no Fallout 76 stuff.
Yeah, it's not like a happening. Super buggy. Like, the game works, it plays well, it's polished. You know, it's Capcom. Capcom's gonna put out, you know, a solid 8 out of 10 every time at least. You know, they're a pretty decent, good company that I respect. There's
your solid 1 or 2 idiots trying to make an argument for bad graphics, but we just ignore that entirely.
That's never an argument.
There's one review that's just completely in Spanish, so we just ignore that one as well. No clue what's even happening there. And then I was telling Jay earlier, there's the classic negative review score-wise with positive comment, as if like the game was great, but he left a 0 out of 10. And then this
is a fantastic game. I had a lot of fun. 1 out of 10 wasn't Mario.
And then this person created like 4 different profiles with different names and just copied and pasted the same positive review, but left negative scores 4 times. So at least as far as the Metacritic reviews go, which is the ones I'm just browsing through right now, that's what happened there, which is laughable at best. But like Jay said, like 90% or more are just positive reviews. And right now there's 600 different reviews on here.
Yeah, I mean, because the game, like Resident Evil 2 was a PlayStation exclusive because Xbox didn't exist and Nintendo wasn't playing ball too much at that time. Right. I mean, they had the N64, but they were kind of like, we're going to dictate a little harsher what comes out for that.
So a mechanic
but this is now available for the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, and the PC. So it's a much easier to get a hold of game.
Right.
And so more people are playing it, which is great. You know, people should play games.
It's open to everybody now, which is bringing everybody into the series, and maybe we'll revitalize some more remake. Who knows? We'll kind of see where that goes. Yeah. But a mechanic that I actually really like, that it is kind of a love-hate relationship, and I know you don't play a lot of scary games, so you may not have a whole lot of experience with this, but they inserted a mechanic that there's a few games I've seen do this, to where they insert an enemy that can show up at any given time of the game and actually shows up a pretty good bit, and you cannot kill it. Period. Can't be done. And he can kill you pretty easily. It's like a giant freaking juggernaut that just walks at you. It's creepy because if you pay close attention, if you're playing like with a headset, they let it, the cue for it is you hear his footsteps, and you know, you pan the camera and you can kind of diagnose where the actual sound is coming from, and you're like, okay, he's coming from here. I do not need to move so he doesn't know where I am. Otherwise, I am in trouble. Because you can't, there's no sense in wasting ammo on it. You learn pretty early you can't kill the guy. It's just not part of what's outside of like story elements where you're meant to damage him and stuff like that. But in terms of having in the real-time gameplay, there's not jack squat you can do to this guy, which is a great element for scary games, because that adds a whole nother element of tension and really panic. I guess if you were in a tight corridor and you really didn't have anywhere to go, you kind of start getting a little frantic and like, okay, I don't know what to do. This is bad.
The game does a good job at they want you to feel scared, and they have many different tricks that they use to have you feel that emotion. And they've made 7 main Resident Evil games so far. They know what they're doing.
Oh yeah, I definitely I loved Biohazard. You kind of have the same feedback that you have with this game is by and large mostly positive, and then you have a few that wanted it to be.
It was a big game when it came out,
and it was terrifying. By the way,
it was, which is why I didn't look at it.
I haven't watched this game in its entirety, so it's a little preemptive. But so far, Biohazard is scarier than this one is to me.
I would imagine. Because Biohazard is a slower, like it's not an action game.
Right.
You're not as, you don't have as many tools at your belt to deal with what's coming at you.
Right.
You're not a fighter. You're some dude looking for his wife.
Who foolishly goes into an abandoned swamp or in a state in the bayou.
If you thought your missing wife was there, you'd do the same thing.
I don't know, man. I've been to some bayous. I might be like, well,
you'd be like, sorry, Kendall.
It's been real, babe. I've seen too
solid 5 or 6 years of marriage now, or however long.
I've seen too many horror movies. I know how this goes.
You're already dead, and if you're not, you're dead to me. Bye.
The funniest part about that like, did you watch the intro of that game at all? Of Biohazard specifically, yes. The part where he gets out of the car, goes through here, and everything's fine. It just looks like a creepy swamp. And then eventually you get to a point where there's literally like mutilated cow legs forming a shape that are like strung on wires, like kind of like a pentagram kind of thing made of cow mutilated legs. And he's just like, okay, keep going. It's fine.
He's like, that's weird.
That's strange. Must be the neighbors. Keeps going through. I'm like, okay, no one's going to point. Okay, well, you're going to die.
But again, I mean, because the dude, like, it's the dude's wife who
had been missing for years at that point.
Yeah, and suddenly he gets a phone call from her, right?
I don't remember if they said it was a phone call or a text message. I think it was a text message.
Oh, yeah, regardless. But if you had any inkling of, hope that she was alive and being held here, well, I mean, I probably would call.
Yeah, I was going to say,
like you'd be.
I'm not going to a abandoned estate in the bayou by myself. You best believe that.
If it was daytime, I'd be all for it. But if it was anywhere near nightfall, I would.
Well, and it was like way away from civilization. So like it's through a text. This is getting into the morality of what decisions do you make here. It's through a text, so you don't even actually know it's your wife at that point. So that's like flag number one. And then you go by yourself hundreds of miles from any point of civilization or communication because he had not had cell service for a while. And then you choose to go in there by yourself. Like, that's 3 really bad ideas altogether.
I understand that, like, if there's hope of your wife being alive, found, whatever.
Be smart about it.
You're gonna go and might not be thinking in the right headspace, but like at least tell someone where you're going.
Right.
Call the cops or something.
I'll call my friend Joe, who is on this podcast right now. Like, Joe,
Jack Daniels, guess where we're going?
Joe, I'm going to the bayou. Call Jack.
You and me, Jack.
Jack will know what to do.
Jack Daniels always knows what to do.
And we just take it down from there. The Resident Evil Biohazard never happened. Thank you, Jack Daniels. So that was a tangent that had nothing to do with Resident Evil 2.
We just sit and drink instead.
Anyway, back to the actual game we're supposed to be talking about, which is...
So Resident Evil 2 is a game for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Microsoft Windows. You can play it now. It's been out since the 25th of January. Highly received well. It's a more action-paced game. Play it. Tell me what you think of it.
It's a meet in the middle. It has a lot of suspense stuff to it, but it definitely has more action than Biohazard did, I would say.
You gonna pick it up?
Probably not. I'll probably I don't really own that many horror games. Like, I'll play them, but I don't want to spend $60 on them.
It might be one I pick up around Halloween time. Just kind of.
I have a hard time imagining you surviving this game.
I don't know, because again, I've seen some stuff, and because I can handle zombies and gore and jump scares like that or whatever, and especially in a game where you're capable. Like, I was playing. Oh shoot, what was that game I was playing? John told me to play it. That underwater horror game.
BioShock? I wouldn't really consider that hard, but
let me open up Steam real quick. But it's just this game where you have no weapons. You can't fight. You're just being taken on a ride, and I already uninstalled it, so I have to look.
Sounds like Amnesia, but I don't think that was underwater.
No, it wasn't Amnesia. John is screaming at his phone right now as he's listening to this.
A jackal. It's a jackal.
Last, I'm not gonna. Oh, Soma. That's the game. Soma. It's like the reason I didn't like Soma because I could handle the scariness of it because there were things you can do and whatever. But like at the end of the day, you're helpless. Like if you mess up, if you get caught, there's nothing that you can do. You have no weapon. You can't outrun it. You're just done. But like in this game, like Resident Evil, you know. You have a little more free range. You have weapons.
Except for that one guy I told you about.
Yeah, but still, like, you know, everything has a solution to it as opposed to, oh, you turned down this hallway at the wrong time. You're dead. Like.
Right. I haven't seen any moments like that yet. It wouldn't surprise me if they pulled like one or two of those.
Yeah, I think I could do this game. We'll see. I mean, it wouldn't be the most comfortable experience for me, but I don't think I'd quit it.
I feel like the ambience is going to get to you a little bit.
Ambience doesn't really bug me too much. I don't know. We'll see.
They don't do. They do the quiet game, so they don't do a whole lot of soundtrack. It's mostly like ambient. You're just that, and you're going through a powerless police station with your flashlight.
Yeah.
So like everything's dark,
right?
Which creates a whole nother issue. Whole nother issue because you've eliminated your peripherals in an area where things are trying to eat you. So that is very concerning in a lot of ways. But it does work. I really hope you do play it because I would love to watch. So by all means, go for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's in October. That's a ways out from here. A lot go on between now and then, but.
Everyone in the comments make this happen. We'll donate money to Jay and make this game happen, or someone just buy it for him.
I still really want to play Call of Cthulhu too.
Oh yeah, that'd be another good one.
That was we talked about that back in season 3 as well. I think like episode 4 or 5 or something like that. It was
so wrapping this one up because I don't want to get too much further into the game with it being as new as it is without going into too much stuff for people, but. There's one other thing we were going to talk about that we actually talked about way earlier in the podcast live. I think like season 1.
Yeah. Season 1.
There's a game called Days Gone that is finally coming out, supposedly.
Days coming soon.
This year in the very end of April. They first announced it, my gosh, in 2016. And they did say when they announced it that, hey, we know it's not coming out until at earliest 2018. Yeah, this is
when the first trailer was like literally a janky looking, like even watching it, I was like, this is cheesy. Tech demo, basically.
Right. They just announced it really early. And then when we finally did get a trailer somewhere around 2017 or 18, and it looked pretty cool. And gave everybody a lot of anxiety because it's one of those games. If you go back and listen to the podcast, we talk about it a little bit. That has so many zombies that killing the zombies in an area is not always an option. Like there's just too many, so you're gonna have to figure out another way to get out of Dodge. Basically,
I think the zombies thing. I know we just talked about a zombie game for a long time, but I think it's getting a little overdone at this point. I think this game is like a few years too late. But we'll see how it does.
I'm hesitant to say like zombies are outplayed because that's such a.
I think there will always be room for zombies in the society of horror games and all that stuff. But it's definitely just like when I saw the trailer for it, as cool as it looked, I was like, it's another zombie game. Friggin' heck. Like,
I mean, it is, but like somewhere in my head, that's also like saying, here's another war game, or here's another sci-fi fantasy game, or something. I was like, yeah, but I mean, it could still, it's got plenty of room to work with, so we'll see how that goes. But
I just like seeing new things,
Well, I mean, my gosh, like at some point, we're gonna run out of stuff.
Yeah, you say that. The reason why Days Gone actually got a bit of a pushback was because Anthem is coming out. We're not going to talk about it a whole lot, but I just wanted to touch on it quickly. The demo for Anthem dropped on Thursday or Friday. I think it was Friday. The game it has its ups and downs. I guess we'll talk about it next week. We were going to talk about it this week, but we're at like freaking 40 minutes, so screw it. But it's like Anthem's the thing. Look out for it.
I mean, I'll take a question or two on it real quick just to end the podcast with, because I haven't seen or played any of the demos. So what did they let you do? Did they let you traverse any, or was it more like
they gave you so basically they let you either do, when you loaded into it, you could do like free mode, you could do a mission, or you could do there was some third thing or whatever. So you could either just fly around and just, because if you don't know what Anthem is, you're basically Iron Man or War Machine or whatever you want to call it in this thing called a javelin instead of the Iron Man suit. And you fly around and you're a weapon of destruction and you kill things kind of Monster Hunter-esque. And it's a massive game and it looks fun. But as I was watching the demo, I was like, but there's nothing here.
So are we scared?
It seems like they were like, wow, because it takes place, it's a jungle environment. And so it's like there's trees and more trees and muds and rivers, but like what is there to do in all of this place? There's nothing to explore. It's not Zelda. You don't find treasure chests and heart pieces. You just find monsters to shoot. And it's I don't know. And then the shooting mechanics are kind of that of the Division, where it's super bullet spongy and you just shoot an enemy and just like watch the amount of damage you do just tick up.
Interesting.
And you're just putting bullets after bullets after bullets into an enemy, and like there's no indicator that it's getting weaker, and then suddenly they just die. And it's
so. Are we scared that they are potentially heading for a No Man's Sky problem?
I don't know, man, because the thing about No Man's Sky is there was no demo. After the demo, a lot of people are still really excited about it and really hyped for it. And, you know, kudos, and I'm glad for it, because this game, it does look fun, but I'm just worried that, like, you know, 10 hours into it, into this massive multiplayer online game, you're just going to be like, do you want to do another mission? No. Do you want to fly around? No. All right, let's play Overwatch instead. Like,
I see that. I guess it just depends on everybody's, because like I remember when this was a random one, but when Titanfall first came out, I mean there was nothing to that game. It was just
an online
multiplayer shooter. Call of Duty, but they added mechs and parkour.
Yeah, you could double jump and you had a mech.
And you could scale walls like a beast. And we played the crap out of it for hours and hours at a time. Just for the sake of being able to drop a mech into the middle of a barrier. Like,
I don't know if
you guys are screwed.
I don't know if Anthem has PvP. That would be really interesting. But like, if it doesn't have PvP, I'm really worried about this game, because I just don't think that there'll be enough content in it to sustain. But then again, like if you look at Sea of Thieves, you go to an island, you dig up a chest, you bring it back. You go to an island, you dig up a chest, you bring it back. Like, I guess on paper it sounds boring, but it's one of the most fun games. Like, everyone that I know that has played Sea of Thieves is like well worth the money. So I don't know.
I see that.
We'll have to see.
Anyways, so that's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Thanks everybody for listening and coming back to season 4 with Joe and myself. And
it was Jay the whole time. I fooled you.
How dare? What did you do with Joe?
Gave him a grilled cheese sandwich. He walked away.
That sounds like Joe.
Provolone.
Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where'd you go from? Cotton Eye Joe. He's gone now. Anyway, so that was a lot of fun. We're going to end it with a question of the day like we normally do. We kind of already know the answer to this, so this is really more for any of you out there.
For you guys.
But what is a game that you would like to play this year that may have come out last year or even earlier that was a very well-received game? Doesn't necessarily have to be a game of the year thing, but was just overall really well-received and you didn't get a chance to play and you would really like to put that on your list to play this year. We already said earlier, mine was Hellblade, and I actually have already beaten it and recorded an entire Let's Play of it. And it will be coming on the channel presumably after this podcast. I don't know when it's going to launch. But it's all recorded and all posted and up on YouTube. It just hasn't been scheduled out yet. So that's actually completely done. So I've actually already done that, and I'm looking forward to a podcast episode where we get to talk about that, because I got a lot of stuff I'd like to talk about with that game. So Jay has some work to do, because if I'm not mistaken, are you sticking with God of War, or do you want to pick it?
I mean, at this point, I'm playing both God of War and Red Dead Redemption 2.
Okay.
I'm enjoying Red Dead more than I am God of War, if I have to be honest with you. That's just my preference in gaming.
Okay.
Is really what it comes down to. It's not that God of War is a bad game. God of War is a great game.
I mean, as much as you...
A little too chunked up for me.
As much as you love Grand Theft Auto, I could have really presumed that like beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, well, Red Dead Redemption 2 is much different than GTA just because of the setting alone. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's an open world sandbox, you know, game made by the same people.
If you take the theme away, then they have similar natures of a style of game.
Also, I do understand why Red Dead won best soundtrack. Playing through it, hearing the music with the moments in the game and all that stuff, I can see why it won. I still don't agree with it, but I can see why it won.
But it at least became a little more clear as to maybe why. Okay, that's a fair assessment, which I mean, I figured it had to be something other than just money's sake. Like surely they at least had some leg to stand on somewhere.
So how about you guys? Pick a game from the last 3 years or so that maybe went by you. You haven't been able to play it yet or whatever. Pick it up, play it. Tell us what you think of it. Let us know what game it is.
And we will see you next week as we talk about Kingdom Hearts 3.
Everyone is Sora.
Everyone, including Joe. He'll be back.
Gonna make me have to play 2 people on next week's podcast. It's not in my contract.
You're welcome.
I'm not doing that.
Am I talking to Jay or Joe?
I'm gonna have like a freaking identity crisis.